For my research presentation, I decided to research Paul Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich is a well-known scientist, and he made great breaks in the field of microbiology. He changed the way we look at science today. His works have won him many awards, and he is an inspiration to researchers and scientists everywhere. First, I am going to give a little bit of a life overview for Paul Ehrlich. He was born in 1854 in Germany. He went to school and got his education, and then in 1883 married Hedwig Pincus, who was only 19 at the time they got married. They then had 2 daughters, Stephanie and Marianne. He passed away on August 20th, 1914. This was due to a stroke. When World War I broke out, he had a stroke that left him with complications. He never fully recovered and had a second stroke later that year that led to his passing on August 20th. Now that you know a little bit about Ehrlich, I am going to give some background information on his education. He was a German biochemist, and he studied at Maria Magdalena Gymnasium, which was located in Poland. He earned his bachelor's degree there and went on to many other universities doing research. Because he had done so much research, it led him to being able to pursue many different roles in his professional career. To understand how much Ehrlich contributed to the field of science, I will be giving an overview of his career. So first, none of this would have been possible if he did not get his PhD. He earned his doctorate in medicine in 1878. When working on his doctorate, he decided that his thesis would be over animal tissues and the staining and dyeing techniques for them. Once he acquired his doctorate, he was hired as an assistant professor and was later promoted to associate professor at the Berlin Medical Clinic. During his time at the Berlin Medical Clinic, he was able to continue the research he had begun during school on animal tissues. Because he had his PhD, he could work as a physician or as doing research. Ehrlich did a little bit of both. In 1882, he took a job as the senior house physician at the Charité Hospital in Berlin. He worked there for 8 years and continued his research on animal tissues. Then, in 1890, his research caught the attention of Robert Koch. Koch was well known for his research in infectious diseases. Koch hired Ehrlich as his assistant at the Institute of Infectious Diseases under his direction. During his time under Koch, he began researching immunology. Then, in 1896, he became the director of the Institute for the Control of Therapeutic Sera. He continued his research on immunology there as well. He became the director of the Institute in 1899. These are the major career changes that allowed him to make all of his discoveries. There are more where he found a cure for syphilis, but I am focusing on the immunology parts of his career. He had many different positions, and through every one of them, he contributed to the field of science in major ways. Now that I have talked about the ways that Paul Ehrlich has had a big impact on microbiology, I wanted to give him some credit and show off his accomplishments. I talked about this earlier, but it was a major discovery, so I thought it was appropriate to circle back. He is the founder of chemotherapy, and he discovered this by finding a treatment for syphilis. It is an antibiotic treatment called Salvarsan, and it was the first antibiotic and the first effective treatment for syphilis. He also won a Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1908. He was awarded this along with a colleague for their work in the field of immunology. He has had a lot of accomplishments. Paul Ehrlich is responsible for discovering the basic principles of immunology. The research he did throughout the entirety of his educational career was working with tissues, dyeing and staining them and seeing how they interact and what works best, was the foundation for his discovery of immunology. There were many things that his research discovered. First, he formed his theory that living cells have side chains which can bind to toxins. This theory explains how immunity works. He explained this theory with the side chain model of immunity. This model allowed him to discover that the side chains of the cells bind to toxins, and our bodies respond to this by producing antibodies. What this means is that our bodies are preparing to fight an infection, and the antibodies give us immunity from illnesses. Now I will be giving some insight as to why immunity is so important. So immunology helps us understand our immune systems, which helps us learn how we fight infections and how we can boost our immune systems. There are ways to do that, like with drink powders and gummies and vitamins, but without Ehrlich's discoveries, we would not know the ways that we can help ourselves stay healthy. This field of study is also very important because it helps us understand why we need vaccines and how they help us. It also allows for researchers to create more vaccines, which provide us with more immunity and protection from getting sick. Since I have been talking about immunology, I wanted to give some reasoning as to why I chose to research Paul Ehrlich and his work with immunology. Immunology is important to me because it helps me understand my own body and how to prevent myself from getting sick. I was a preemie baby, and I was born at 27 weeks. I was in the NICU for 3 months and was in and out of hospitals for years afterwards. When I was 2, I wasn't allowed to leave my house for a year because how sick I was, and I wasn't allowed to go to daycare or anything my entire childhood. So everything that normal kids got to have, I didn't. Some people do not understand how it feels to be very sick, and when you have complications from being born so early, just a cold can turn into something major. It is a constant battle to make sure I keep up with my medicines and get enough sleep, especially in college. With all that stuff not happening, I get sick, and so that is why it's important for me to understand my body and be able to tell when I feel sick and a sickness is coming and try to remedy it before it can get bad. I have found ways that I can boost my immune system, especially when my family is sick or cold and flu season gets really bad. But immunity is something that I have to rely on and why I get my vaccines so regularly, so I know how my immune system is doing. Without Paul Ehrlich and his discoveries without immunology, I would not have as many ways to keep myself healthy, and I would be sick much more often. This slide shows the sources I used, but I just wanted to close this by saying how much fun I have had in this class, and I have learned so much. These labs were always interesting, and it was fun to do the activities as well. It was a very positive experience for me, and I had a great time. This concludes my research over Paul Ehrlich.